Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a really powerful case study in healing, and it comes from the memoir Swipe Therapy. It's a story all about what happens when the life you've so carefully planned just gets deleted, and you have to figure out how to start all over again.
That's how author Mira Samonti described it. That one moment when her entire future just vanished. She was only 5 weeks away from her dream wedding in Bali, and her 3.5-year relationship ends over the phone. Every plan, every dream, gone. Just like that.
So, that's the big question, right? How do you possibly bounce back from that? We're going to follow Mira's journey from total heartbreak to healing. And it's a path that doesn't start with some big moment of clarity. No, it starts with this profound numbness and one really critical decision. She was absolutely reeling. And it wasn't just the breakup. It was the crushing discovery that her fiancé had also stolen a huge amount of money from her. The pain was just too much to deal with, so her brain did the only thing it could. It went numb. Her very first instinct was to escape, to find literally anything to distract her from that storm raging inside.
And then, as fate would have it, a work trip to San Francisco for Google was scheduled for that exact same week. So she's standing at this massive crossroads. Does she stay in Jakarta and just sink into her grief? Or does she get on a plane and run as far away as she can?
So, in this moment of total crisis, what does she do? She does what any good Google employee would do. She makes a data-driven decision. She literally makes a pros and cons list. It's this fascinating peek into someone trying to logic their way through an emotional catastrophe. And in the end, the pros for San Francisco, the distraction, the time to think, the physical distance, they won. She chose to run.
In a move she couldn't even really explain to herself, she went to the boutique and she collected her practically perfect Sarah 7 wedding gown. She had no idea what she was going to do with it. Was she going to alter it, donate it, burn it? But deep down, taking that dress was her way of clinging to this tiny, flickering hope that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't really the end.
Okay, so this first phase of her journey is all about a search for distraction. Her gut instinct was to run, right? To use work and distance as a shield. But as she was about to find out, you can't really outrun your own pain. So she quickly realizes that distraction, well, it isn't a real solution. So she makes another incredibly bold choice. Instead of canceling the whole trip to Bali, the very island where she was supposed to get married, she decides to fly her best friends in from all over the world and turn her wedding weekend into a wedding cancellation party. And that one sentence from a friend, man, it just changed everything for her. There she was, standing on the exact spot where she was supposed to say I do, but now she's just surrounded by love. She wasn't a jilted bride anymore. She was just loved. That party completely rewired Bali in her head, turning a place of potential trauma into this powerful symbol of resilience. All right, next up, a pattern of men. Now this is where her healing journey gets really, really interesting. You can basically chart her entire recovery through the different guys she dated. Each one served a totally distinct purpose, a different kind of therapy, you could say, helping her piece herself back together one swipe at a time. So her first big post-breakup connection was with a neuroscientist she met on Tinder. And after she described this intense stress she'd been under, planning a wedding while her relationship was falling apart, the hair loss, the acid reflux, the pure exhaustion, he gave her a name for her suffering. And hearing this diagnosis, emotional burnout, it was a total revelation. It reframed her whole experience. It wasn't some personal failing on her part. It was a legitimate, recognized condition. This intellectual framework finally gave her a way to look at her trauma from a safe distance. So you can see these first two guys as these two really critical but still incomplete phases of her recovery. The neuroscientist was her mental rebound. He helped her understand her pain. And then you have the porn star, and yes, that was his actual former job, who was her physical rebound. He was this spontaneous adventure that helped her reconnect with her body and just the simple joy of being in the moment.
But here's the thing. Neither of those men addressed the root cause of her suffering. It was her next and most significant relationship that would finally force her to confront the real source of her pain. And that led to the core diagnosis of this whole story.
So she meets the banker. He's smart, successful, a divorced executive whose life was, and he said this himself, 95% his job.
And that meant constant last-minute cancellations, being emotionally unavailable. Basically, she was always an afterthought. So you have to ask why. Why did she fall for him? And why did it all feel so painfully familiar?
It turns out his whole pattern, being brilliant and successful, but also emotionally and physically gone, it triggered this really deep ache inside her. It was a feeling she had normalized a long, long time ago. A feeling that, for her, was basically tied up with the idea of love itself. And right here, the pattern just becomes crystal clear. Her father, a brilliant, kind man, but his offshore job meant he was gone for months at a time. The banker, a smart, successful guy, but his global job meant he was also constantly absent. She had grown up learning that love meant patiently waiting for someone who was never really there, and the banker was a perfect echo of that childhood pain.
This was it, the massive, earth-shattering aha moment. She realized she was just reenacting her childhood role. She was equating love with suffering patiently and accepting these little crumbs of affection because she thought that's all she deserved. She wasn't really in a relationship with the banker. She was in a relationship with her own unresolved past.
Now, you might think a realization that painful is a setback, but it wasn't. It was the breakthrough. It completely changed the entire goal of her journey.
Like so many of us do after a major heartbreak, her whole mission was to find the right person, that partner who would finally make her feel whole again. She thought finding the one was the finish line.
And here is the ultimate twist of her story. The banker wasn't the solution at all. He was the catalyst. After all that time feeling numb and distracted after her breakup, the immense pain he caused was proof that her heart wasn't broken for good. It was still working.
And that's when it all finally clicked. She understood the journey was never about finding another person to complete her. It was about facing her deepest patterns, healing her own wounds, and learning how to become whole, all by herself.
It's kind of perfect that her story ends with this thought from a Google project she worked on. It turns out the search for love isn't really about swiping through profiles to find the perfect person. The real search, the one that truly matters, starts inside you. It's doing the hard work of healing yourself so that you're ready for whatever and whoever comes next.